Joining me is going to be Geoff Strickland, who is co-founder and CTO of Tactable, who is a longtime Hasura user. Geoff, how are you?
Doing well. How are you, Rob?
So do you want to give us a little bit of an introduction and background as to who you are, what Tactable is, and then we can sort of jump into the Hasura bits after that?
Cool. Yeah. I'm Geoff Strickland. I'm the CTO and co-founder of a Toronto-based software consulting firm called Tactable. We specialize in cloud transformation and migration. We do a lot of data pipeline work, data integrations, and as of late, we're doing a lot of work in the Gen AI space. So for a lot of our clients, we work with them on their cloud infrastructure, the data pipelines. And the next sort of logical step there is to hold their hand through this new AI journey. So lots of interesting work there.
Yeah. How about personally, just your background, your experience before you went to Tactable? Tell us a little bit about, how you got into the industry and how you ended up at Tactable, co-founding it, that kind of thing.
Cool. Yeah. I'm a software engineer by trade. I did a lot of work in the ad tech and fintech industries. So we founded the company, me and my partner, around 5.5 years ago. Uh, and it was just sort of born out of we were working at this one company, and it was a bit of worked with some of the smartest people I've ever worked with, but we just weren't shipping products, weren't doing anything. It wasn't the most collaborative environment, and we really wanted to build something that kind of had our values in the DNA of the company. So, we set out to build our own thing and really wanted to focus around cloud native development because that was sort of the thing at the time. Kubernetes based systems were coming out. ECS and Cloud Run were only just announced, so it was a cool time to start kind of getting into that space.
Yeah. I love how you mentioned cloud native and then collaborative approaches, and we're going to come back to that in just a little bit. But I'm curious, kind of from the forefront of when you folks started Tactable, if I'm not mistaken, Hasura was kind of part of your stack from the beginning. Is that right?
Yeah, it was interesting. So we got our first contract with a pretty large company. It was actually two large companies, Rakuten and Shopify. They had a joint venture where they wanted to build a connector so that people could sell their Shopify goods on the Rakuten Ichiba storefront, which is one of Japan's largest online retailers. They're sort of like the Amazon in Japan. Um, and so we knew some people in Shopify because we're Toronto based, and the folks at Rakuten, they were looking for a smaller agency, Toronto based. The executives there have a lot of agency with their budget to do what they need. So, using a smaller agency, they could come in under budget, get the work done. So we had this project fixed fee. We had so much. We quoted it at so much. X amount of dollars, X amount of months. And from our perspective, starting out as a small company, we were really looking to optimize and cut down the scope and find efficiencies. So at that point, I was just looking for any way to trim scope, and came across Hasura, which was alpha at the time. This was 5 years and change ago.
Wow.
Um, so at that point, I was like, this looks amazing. It's pretty dicey that it's alpha, but we were in the process of kind of hammering out the details and scope of the engagement. So I took the time to do some proof of concept work, deemed it to be stable enough to take a bit of a gamble on it, and we built our system around that, and it's been running smoothly for 5 years.
Gotcha. So like when it was in the alpha stage way back when, how exactly were you folks using Hasura to help cut that scope and help accelerate things? And then how has that changed over time? Because 5 years is a long time, and there's been a lot of maturity and a lot of growth in the product itself.
Yeah, well, we used it essentially to be like a backend as a service. So my kind of thought, my goal, or at the time was, we were building out this application. I have my database, I have my schema, I have all my data in there, and I was like, I just want anything that gives me access to my data instantly. Um, I don't care if it's ugly. I don't care if it just how it gives it to me. I just didn't want to have to like have the overhead of writing APIs, controllers, unit tests. And So that's when we found it, and it was a pretty mature product for an alpha build, and we basically leaned on it to be our back end. So we would leverage it for database migrations. A data explorer tool helps us write our GraphQL queries in the console. And yeah, really, like I said, we leaned on it to be our back end. Let us focus on modeling our data, building our app. Focus on how we want to structure the front end and just give us our data how we want it while
Yeah,
we're developing.
I gotcha. And so you mentioned Shopify in the beginning. Are there any other like larger enterprise customers that you folks have been working with by like integrating Hasura into their stacks as well?
Yeah, so that first project that got our company off the ground was Rakuten and Shopify.
Okay.
That went well, and so we had a great relationship with the folks at Rakuten, and so they were actually spinning up another joint venture with Walmart. So it was Walmart USA and Rakuten Japan. They wanted uh, to create a Walmart marketplace in Japan so that Walmart US could sell their products overseas. They had tried something in past that didn't work very well, so this time it would be like Walmart powered by Rakuten. And so because we had done a good job on the Shopify stuff, we had a good relationship. They looped us in to build that out. So right now there's a Walmart official store on Rakuten, and basically every Walmart product that's sold in Japan is running through the system. So products are synced, orders are kind of synced back and forth. And there's a third party shipping provider that's in that joint venture that manages the last mile delivery from US to Japan. And this is another system that we built this all around Hasura because we had used it so successfully on the first thing, saved a lot of time. It was pretty bulletproof that we were like confident that this was the move for the next thing. So that's a pretty big one, and it's pretty high profile. And once again, I think that has been up and running for 4 years now, and it's just been pretty bulletproof.
Well, I feel like we hear that a lot from folks in the community and, even on the enterprise side, right, of Hasura kind of becoming this back-end hub for all these different, not only services, right, but these different domains and different organizations kind of all coming into one central, for lack of a better term, repository. So that seems to be a really common pattern. But I'm curious, just kind of forecasting and looking into the future, what kind of trends are you folks seeing with your clients, thinking about ways that Hasura can be integrated into future projects or how DDN is going to be involved? Just kind of curious what you folks are thinking about.
Yeah, I think there's a common problem that it's not necessarily a new problem, but I think a lot of companies are at a much further stage in their kind of data maturity these days. But an issue is data silos within organizations. So, big enterprise companies, they have many different databases, many different departments, and these departments and data systems, like they're just you don't have access across these kind of great walls. So, analyst A wanting data from data silo B, it's just like impossible. They have to put in a kind of formal ticket for some other team to go into their backlog to create some kind of way for them to get access to that data. And so what we're seeing a lot of is companies wanting to kind of converge those silos or put in some way of accessing data across them with role-based access, so that internally people can self-serve their data, which allows the businesses to move faster. And then at another level, we're seeing a similar issue where above an organization, there's kind of cross-organization data sharing that people are trying to do. So, company A, company B, and we've actually talked to a client that has sort of many companies that want to share data amongst them, but a big problem is data stewardship. So they all want to share their data, but they all want to own their data. And this is something where I think the DDN is a really interesting thing because you can create essentially a super graph where everybody, can be a steward of their data, but then stitch it together at a higher level and kind of democratize that. So that's like a big thing that we're seeing. Every company we talk to has data silo issues, and more we're seeing more companies wanting to share their data across organizations. And Hasura is like a great option for doing that both within an organization and now across organizations.
Yeah. That makes me think about a couple of things that I've heard that we have, internally coming down the pipe in terms of ways of kind of controlling builds for certain subgraphs and making sure, that stewardship piece that you're talking about is really respected while still making the access as easy as possible and being able to democratize and share this data across an organization. I'm curious. I have like one more question before we jump into kind of the final bit to wrap up. You mentioned how your company, right, you're getting more and more into like kind of doing generative AI work for clients and customers. And I'm just kind of curious if you've thought through like, inclusion of AI workflows with event triggers and kind of how Sora fits into that.
Yeah, there's the low hanging fruit with event triggers that when you write data to the database, you can use an event trigger to generate the vector embeddings and pump that back in. That's not even like a creative solution. That's just sort of like the obvious way of leveraging some of that with Hasura. And so that's my first thought. We haven't really gone down that path so much with Hasura yet, but I've been exploring, and at Google Next, I was talking to some of the guys, and was they told me that there's some interesting things on the roadmap for that space. So kind of looking forward to hearing a bit about more what the team has in store there.
Yeah, totally. Speaking of Google Next, that was a fun few days, and it was good to meet you there in person. For anybody that's on the call right now that's a little bit more curious about Tactable or about you and the work that you do, how can they reach out? How can they find out more information?
You can go to our website at tactable.io or shoot us an email at info@tactable.io.
Awesome. And I assume you're on the socials, and maybe you've got rants and opinions that you're throwing out there. I don't know if that's so common anymore with Twitter's the evolution into X, but if you're around, can they find you anywhere?
I try to stay off the public social things, but
Likewise.
they can
Yeah.
find us on LinkedIn.
Okay.
Reach out. Love to chat with anybody that has any questions.
All right. Geoff, not to downsize Jonathan, but you're my favorite Canadian on the call today. Thanks so much for being here with us. Thanks for taking the time out of your day. We look forward to seeing you again soon.
Thanks a lot, Rob.
Yeah,
Appreciate it.
absolutely.